Destiny's game director says they have a problem retaining players, so he's admitting what everybody already knew. After the final shape, the most recent big expansion, a lot of people just decided to leave. That expansion was the end of the big arc. It was actually pretty good, so people saw their good ending, and it seems they actually took it. And what we now have seen is that what came to follow kind of proved their decision right. And so much so that just as players are now writing off their 8-year investment in Destiny 2, the news that's broke is that PlayStation have just wrote off $204 million of theirs. Here's where today's story really begins. This week, Destiny Renegades launched. It's the second expansion under their new development schedule, and it's one that is liberally taking from the aesthetic and the language of Star Wars, very much in the hopes of that being a good jumping on point for new players, which is exactly what both Destiny and Bungie desperately need. They need a win, because recently they've been taking nothing but losses. So far, Renegades is not a loss. Now, it may have the lowest concurrent player count that a Destiny 2 expansion has ever had on Steam, and it may also have a mixed user review rating across the expansion and the main game, but hey, at least it's not negative. And for games like this, that can actually be saying something. But when we look at the more enthusiast people over on the Destiny Reddit, you do see, actually, well, a bit of a better reception. It seems that the actual content in this expansion is at least better than what people got in Edge of Fate. But of course, for many people, that will be damning by way of the faintest of praise. And it's certainly not a reversal of fortunes. Now, the last time we talked about them was when the Edge of Fate expansion was received, honestly, terribly by people. And then, of course, when CEO Pete Parsons pulled his golden parachute to escape with his freshly vested stocks. And things have not really improved since then, even as Bungie are trying to keep on top of feedback whilst preparing to deliver this expansion. And if you needed a sign of just how bad things are, part of their marketing strategy is, in fact, to just admit how bad things are. Look, if you don't want to code or you're not into games, skip this, but if not, then I have got something for you, and that is boot.dev/Bellular News. They're today's sponsor, and you know what? Where the fuck were they a decade ago when I was in university? You see, I've got a BEng computer science, and from doing that, I can tell you that Boot teaches this stuff incalculably better. Now, what they teach you is back-end development. That's the kind that lands 100k plus comp jobs, and they do it through a proper 12-month structured program that's like a role-playing game. I mean, literally, leaderboards, achievements, a Discord that actually helps, and over 750,000 students have completed 33.7 million lessons, which is wild, and that's including TypeScript, Go, and Python from the fundamentals up. So this is not some learn to code in 2 weeks silly scam thing. Boot teaches you the fundamentals that separate professional developers from vibe coders who ship security nightmares. And just take a look at their new training grounds feature. It's kind of wild. It knows what you've learned on their platform, and then it uses that to challenge you, basically generating personalized coding problems using spaced repetition so you actually learn. It's always growing, it's an actual community, and you can actually browse all of their contents for completely free. You only pay when you want to get stuck into all the interactivity and game-related stuff. So, to learn it all properly and get 25% off your first purchase, go to boot.dev/Bellular News. The way to save the most money is to do that on the annual plan, and of course that's backed up by the fact that if you're not happy, they will refund you on the spot. Speaking to IGN, Destiny 2 game director Tyson Green was blunt about the last 2 years of Destiny 2 and the hole that they're currently trying to dig their way out of, though I suppose I'd recommend they climb rather than dig. Anyway, he's had this role since February 2024, he's a 2-decade veteran of Bungie, and for many people none of that really matters, given how the company is building the game right now and how people actually feel about it. We're basically, between the layoffs and the final shape, actually feeling like a conclusion, a lot of people just decided it was the right time to leave. Here's what he said, quote, "People were pleased and satisfied with what they played. And then the big downward spike in population came after. That happened because we ended the saga. So you get what you pay for, right?" And when he says that, yeah, I guess he is right. They signposted to everyone that this is the end, right as they themselves looked weaker than ever. I mean, they basically celebrated the end of their big saga, by doing a round of layoffs. And let's be real, players want to back a winner. They absolutely didn't look like that. But obviously, Bungie and PlayStation would like some more money. So to get that, they've got to keep their game going. But the problem is that, as they frame it, they simply don't have the player base that they would need to do that. Here's a quote. Destiny has been on this steady hardening of the core audience. More and more core players are staying and playing the game, but relatively few new people come into the game. That makes sense. And 8 years in, they were hoping to make a clean break with the Edge of Fate expansion, letting them reset and relaunch. They basically had an idea to take their problem of a shrinking player base and essentially rework the game to solve that problem, which could sound good in theory, but in reality, it went terribly. And in Tyson Green's own words, the progression reworks and grand ideas simply, quote, didn't work. This was all quite bad. They ended up angering many of their remaining players, who of course, as we've established, well, there wasn't really many of them to begin with, and then they had to fold those lessons into their next expansion as they at the same time had to hotfix what they could to salvage the live game. And with the game being in such flux, they couldn't even tell players what the future would look like. And as Tyson Green frames it, they genuinely don't have an option. Quote, there are really two kinds of live games, those that listen to players and respond, and those that don't. And we don't want to be a dead live game. Which of course means keeping players happy so that Bungie can make money. But unfortunately, PlayStation already got what they needed from the final shape, right? It came out, they sold a bunch of copies, but then the layoffs happened. Now those layoffs are just them reducing staffing costs, and the sales for the expansion would have driven some nice little profits. Now obviously that is all in the past, and it means that now all they can do is look at what little they've got left. And here's the thing, based on what PlayStation is telling their investors, it's actually even less than we would have thought. Sony's Q2 earnings, which were posted in November, have a dire report for Bungie within. They were actually singled out as a major source of lost revenue. And here's how bad it is. In 2022, Bungie was purchased for $3.6 billion. As of November 2025, Sony is writing off at least some of that cost, to the tune of 31.5 billion yen, which is 204 million USD, and about 6% of what they paid. So that's gone in just 3 years. And if you're wondering why, well, after 2 years of layoffs and staff being reassigned within PlayStation's broader business, plus how the games have actually performed, which hasn't been well, what remains of Bungie and Destiny 2 is now worth much less to Sony. And that's why they've recorded this impairment, because against those assets, quote, the level of sales and user engagement have not reached the expectations we had at the time of the acquisition. Now, they did try to downplay the cause here. The decision is framed as being, quote, partially due to changes in the competitive environment. Now, broadly, I would agree. However, one of the changes in the competitive market isn't just the enemies being good, it's them continually fumbling the ball and being less competitive. Now, the implication here is that other games, especially other live games, have just drawn attention away from Destiny 2. Maybe Borderlands, or even PlayStation's own Helldivers, which is praised elsewhere in the report. Now, it was a brief report, but following that, of course, there was the call, and the call went into more detail. A question from Nomura Securities tried to peel back what was actually left at Bungie now that those assets have been written off, and whether much risk remained. Basically, they wanted to know if this was just the start of a series of write-downs. The CFO Lin Tao explained to them that this only relates to Destiny 2's performance and the assets that they've already written down. They're not writing down goodwill against the company, which effectively would be the future profit they think they would have been able to make against the acquisition cost. But what they are doing is they're hedging their bets for investors. That is obviously a prudent thing because they can't guarantee that Marathon won't fail or that Destiny 2 will, continue to miss its expectations. The only thing that she was comfortable saying was that the rest of the games division shouldn't be overly hurt by any of the ongoing changes with Bungie, and that's actually perhaps the cruelest part of this. Bungie's existence under PlayStation has actually gone so badly that Sony is not betting on their success anymore. They're just trying to manage their downside risk while hoping some of those future bets will pay off. Let's talk about the future bets. So in the earnings call, Lin Tao was fairly clear. She said that PlayStation expects Marathon to launch next year, and that they're giving Bungie the support and the runway to get the game launched in a way that doesn't immediately crash. They have, of course, learned a few lessons in that regard. And to help it not crash and burn, a new playtest has been announced for December, and that's only one of several in recent months. Tao also told investors that the October test had 80,000 participants, with gameplay and retention as the main focus. Now, there was an NDA in this, but reports and a few leaks actually suggest those numbers came back positive, and there was a lot of requested features like proximity chat and missions being reworked. So effectively them actually responding to the alpha complaints. Of course, that being the alpha, that along with the art plagiarism stuff, basically led to them doing the big delay that they did. So, it is clear that Bungie are making this game with the same kind of player-driven focus that they're talking about with Destiny 2. Though at the risk of stating the blindingly obvious, a lot of that talk of player-driven focus has been wheeled out before, and it's not really as if Destiny 2 has been an uncontroversial game. And I should also say, there has been news on the whole art plagiarism thing, because as of this week, we've also heard that Anti-Real, who is the artist whose art was plagiarized by a Bungie employee and then fed into the game, has actually said that everything has been resolved, quote, to her satisfaction. We don't know details, so we can only assume the size of the payout she's received. Anyway, good that there's been at least some justice in that, and that seemingly the artist involved feels happy about it. Bungie and PlayStation will of course hope that that just draws a line under the whole affair, so that they can then go on and launch the game with a little bit less controversy. But regardless of that, they still have to sell copies when the game launches, which we do expect is going to be before next April. Now, kind of ironically, Arc Raiders' success in leapfrogging Bungie may actually help them get some more buy-in from players who wouldn't have previously tried an extraction shooter. Basically, it seems Arc Raiders may have expanded that audience, which should actually tee up Marathon pretty well. But even if it does land, there's another question. Can Bungie actually run 2 live service games at once? Because when we take a look at Destiny 2, we can certainly see they've struggled to manage handling just one. All this, I would say, is a gamble. Large businesses love guaranteed success, and I don't think anything is guaranteed for Bungie here. Look, Destiny has got a team who are just desperately trying to keep the train running, but they're doing that while passengers are basically leaping off the train at any opportunity that they can get. I don't feel great about that. And as for Marathon, it will definitely have a better chance next year than if it had have launched this autumn. But managing 2 live service teams instead of just one, especially with a brand that has had as many controversies as Marathon and a studio that's had as many controversies as Bungie, does seem like a tall order. And this might be why some rumors have surfaced. Rumors that come from Destiny data miners that suggest that Bungie are in, quote, extremely early development on a Destiny 3, as well as a Destiny 2 Classic. Yeah, apparently Destiny 3 and Destiny 2 Classic, which seems weird. It's as if now, 8 years in, they're basically back to square one. And for Destiny, well, when all you've got is a core audience, and they've only really ever cared about one thing, what the hell else can you do? It's kind of what Tyson Green said. All you can do is listen to the players and respond. And I think implicit in that is an acknowledgement. The best Destiny can do is stabilize and slowly grow. I think the days of Destiny being a cultural behemoth, the sort of thing that can sell humongous numbers of copies and get humongous player counts again, I think that is well and truly gone. It's basically maintenance and recuperation, but rammed full of Star Wars, so that you can buy something that you recognize. And on that note, you probably recognize Paradox as being a bit of a fun house of shit shows. Well, that's kind of continuing. If you want to learn all about that, watch this video next.